In our last lesson this week, we'll talk about the importance of considering culture in health psychology research. When we talk about culture, we tend to emphasize cultural differences. This is a natural thing for humans to do, because differences are new and interesting to us. But there's a downside to this natural tendency. First, focusing too heavily on cultural differences can generate ideas of prejudice. Second, this can lead to generalizations that ignore within-group differences. What I mean by that is that people tend to forget that individuals within a group or culture have a variety of differences between them. Sometimes, if we find that a group has a specific difference, we generalize that difference to all members of the group, even when it's not appropriate to do so. For example, if I were a student and I met a researcher for the first time who talked very quickly, I may make an inappropriate generalization that researchers must talk quickly. In reality, speaking speed is something that varies quite a bit within the group of people in this world who call themselves researchers. Here's an interesting example from the course textbook. This graph compares the physical fitness of men and women by showing the distribution of the number of push-ups completed in 1 minute. There are two distinct bell curves, with the men's curve generally higher than the women's curve, indicating a greater number of average push-ups. The women's curve peaks at around 15 push-ups, while the men's peak is just over 20. But we miss some important information if we focus too heavily on the differences. For example, look at where the two graphs overlap. There is a huge amount of men and women who are able to do the same number of push-ups. If you made an assumption that a man will do more push-ups than a woman based on this data, you may be wrong a decent portion of the time. Culture isn't a static thing. It is complex and changes significantly over time. Each person has a different level of analysis when thinking about culture. What this means is that someone's level of awareness about their identity changes from time to time. There are times, like when you're watching this lesson, where the idea of being a student is very relevant to you. Other times, like when you're relaxing with your friends, the idea of being a student becomes less relevant, and so you're less aware of it. This is because context influences a person's level of analysis. In that way, environment can have a strong impact on how people think about and describe themselves. Are there any contexts where different parts of your identity become more relevant to you? This image illustrates how context influences level of analysis. On the left, there is a person relaxing at home. In this situation, his identities of man and friend are most relevant to him at that time. The identities of Hindu, jock, Indian, and family values are still with him, but he is less aware of them at that time. On the right, we see that this man is now hospitalized. His identities of Hindu and Indian are now most relevant to him. Family values, friend, jock, and man are still parts of his identity, but they are now less relevant in this public, medical context compared to his private, relaxed context. Why do you think this happened?